Hello, we are back again to study further the poem, The Problem, written by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the American poet. He said in the beginning of the poem that he likes the church, he likes the cowl, and he is enchanted and attracted towards the churchman. But for all the charm that is inspired in his heart, on looking at these, he decides not to be the cowled churchman because he says that he cannot endure that on him. Prior to these lines, he had also said he had given examples of the various beautiful things of permanent value standing on earth. The Peter's Dome, the statue of Zeus, and some other things, which according to him stood there and could be created only because a hand lent its power to the ones that were constructing these. So, he gives an example. He introduces us to the fact that whatever stands long on earth is, or whatever is created by the gods in ruins, men, is there, can stand long only because God exercises his powers. He endows his powers onto the ones that are creating it. Now we read further. Knowest thou what wove yon wood bird's nest of leaves and feathers from her breast? He asks us a question. Who inspires a bird, a creature of lesser understanding? Who inspires her? Who lives in the woods? Who is unaware of the civilization? Who has her own methods? Who gives these methods to her to construct her nest of leaves, the only material available in the forests, and feathers from her breast? So, to give way to life, to God, to nature, come back to life again, she plucks feathers from her own breast and makes it comfortable for the advent of new life. Then, again the rhetoric, the questions, he poses questions before us to excite us into thought. He says, how the fish outbuilt her shell, painting with morn each annual cell. So how does that fish living in water, floating maybe, where other fish are coming to pluck the food particle that could be lying there, how does she, that insignificant fish are very tiny and their eggs are not to be seen by the naked eye. So he says that how does the fish outbuilds her shell, and with every morning a new cell is created. With every fraction of a second maybe new cells are being created. Or how the sacred pine tree adds to her old leaves new myriads. And when leaves fall on pine trees, very tall trees away from the earth, when they fall down, what causes the growth of myriads, multiple leaves? So life is replaced by yet other life. And the existing life fosters the life that is to come. The three examples that he gives are of the bird, are of the tiny creatures, the fish, and then of the trees. And then he says, such and so grew these holy piles. Holy piles. The examples of the beautiful buildings that stand on earth as wonders, because he believes that these wonders could not have been created but God's help, but without God's help. So such and so grew these holy piles. Piles is the word used for, you see, the cluster of the churches, the awe-inspiring buildings with their rounded domes. They were growing, whilst love and terror laid the tiles. Love and terror laying the tiles is about the coming of one civilization after the destruction of the other. So in ancient times, there were civilizations, there were kingdoms superimposing themselves, grafting themselves on the priorly existing uh, kingdoms. So he says that even while love and terror was laying their tiles, new civilizations were coming into existence. And new buildings as well. The piles of churches. Earth proudly wears the Parthenon as the best gem upon her zone. Parthenon is the the temple made in honor of goddess Athena, the god of chastity. She it's a very beautiful acropolis with a very beautiful pillared structure on which stands, in which is constructed the statue of goddess Athena, and morning opens with hasted lids to gaze upon the pyramids. He says even morning, nature is delighted to see these piles. Every morning that the sun comes, it is overjoyed as if to see one thing imposed upon the other, growths coming up. So even morning is delighted to open her eyelids and gaze upon the pyramids. The beautiful structures of immense size, immense, exquisite, immensely exquisite architecture. So the morning, the sun, here we must say that the morning here means the sun, and morning, the power of heavens to come back and see what is there on the earth. Over England's abbeys bends the sky, and on its friends with kindred eye. Abbeys, the big churches, where big establishment of the orders of the church live and work in communion. So there the morning comes and even the sky, it seems, bends upon it. Now we must understand that because they go very high up, the spires of the churches are very high, and it seems that they are touching the sky, or the sky is bending to see their glory. Over the England's abbeys bend the sky, and on its friends, and on the other lesser, the buildings of lesser heights also with kindred eye. For out of thought's interior sphere, these wonders rose to upper air. These spherical structure, these rounded structures, they challenge the sky. They stand there. How could they? What was the force that brought them to combat the heavens? That was thought's interior sphere. The personification, the usage of a capital T for thought, it is the power personified, the power that thought that existed to give that inspiration, the thought. And it was that thought of the interior sphere that these wonders rose to square with the skies. And nature gladly gave them place, adopted them into her race, and granted them an equal date with Andes and the Ararat. The Andes and the Ararats are the tall mountains, big mountain ranges in Europe. So, mountains no man can create. They were created by nature. They stood there. They were created by the force of nature, the forces that acted upon the solidifying substance into earth. So somehow these got framed, and they, as they stand, so do stand the things created by human beings. This stanza, a big one, is about the beauty of nature. We all know that according to Emerson, the word Emerson means brave. A man who braved the existing system where Trinity was supposed to be God, His Son, and the Holy Spirit. He braved to pronounce that this was now the Trinity. According to him, according to his Unitarian thought, was God, man, and nature. So the first two stanzas were a tribute to God who was extending his hand. And now this stanza, the one that we have read today, is about an admiration to the third aspect of the Unitarian wonder, the Unitarian force, that is nature. He begins by saying that the birds, lesser beings, as understood by people, are able to create homes for the safety of the ones that would come. A fish is able to is able to push its existence from a very tiny unicellular organism growing into multitudes annual cells, and the pine trees thrusting out new myriads of leaves. He says, in this manner grew the piles. We will have to understand that he is talking about, because he begins by saying that the churches inspire him, churches charm him. He says there are so many structures of eternal charm standing on the breast of the earth. One, which according to him is the Parthenon, the the temple erected for the the goddess of chastity, Athena. And then he says the pyramids. He talks about the pyramids and says that these were to house the big monarchs with all their belongings, with too many things that they loved. They all went into the pyramids, and then these structures were erected to to meet the air and to meet the sky. And he says that the most important expression here is out of thought's interior sphere. These were created because there was a thought working somewhere, a thought that is common to God, to man, and to nature. So these three were conspiring to leave on the earth some beautiful structures. Out of those, these things could come into existence. And these stand as contemporaries of Andes and Ararat. We do not know who brought the first bird. We do not know who brought the first fish. We also do not know who planted the first pine, and who made the Parthenon and who made the first pyramid. We are unsure of the makers, as we are unsure of the maker. Man assumed the task and and not lent, but took the direction from the power above and placed such beautiful things on earth as stand equal and contemporary to the Andes and the Ararat. We only have to admire the logic which Emerson is presenting to us. And we all come to believe with him that these wonders were not possible. These piles that sprawl all over the earth, which enchant people, and people are forced. Some drive is there that causes them to bow down in awe and reverence before these. We all bow down before the places of worship. We also bow before the beauties of nature, the wonders of nature. And these are the doings of God, and the doings of man, and the doings of nature. Think it over. Try to see how he fuses by the thought of nature being God, when first he had said that it was God. Then he says that it was man taking inspiration from God. And now he brings the image of nature contriving to present the thought given by God to her, and how she makes these beautiful things. We will read the remaining part of the poem in our next session. Thank you.